they lucky Justin Jefferson has a demand to be traded.
J.J. McCarthy, if he spiked the ball on every play, would have had a higher passer rating than what he did playing a full game today.
He didn't help the Vikings last year. He ain't helping the Vikings this year. And you want to commit a whole nother year to him?
I was wondering all off season. I'm like Kevin O'Connell, the quarterback whisperer per se. You let Sam Darnold walk out the door after throwing 35 touchdowns, just 12 interception, fellas. I'm thinking, okay, this brother better be something special.
When the Minnesota Vikings walked into the offseason, not a lot of people expected them to blow up their own future. They had options. Sam Darnold had just played the best football of his entire career. Daniel Jones was sitting on the open market as a quarterback who was looking for stability. Minnesota had a roster built around Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and Brian Flores' defense. This was a roster that was supposed to compete right now. But instead of doubling down on what was finally working, the Vikings made one of the strangest bets we've seen in years. They walked away from a quarterback who just had played at an MVP caliber level, and they replaced him with a rookie who barely threw the ball in college. The front office didn't re-sign Darnold, even after he kept them afloat and looked more comfortable in the system every single week. They didn't even take a chance on Daniel Jones. I don't blame him for that, but it probably still would have been a better option than McCarthy. They put all their chips into one basket, a 21-year-old quarterback coming out of Michigan who was never asked to carry his team, never asked to throw 30 times a game, and never asked to win with his arm. Minnesota drafted J.J. McCarthy 10th overall and handed him the keys to the franchise.
When I saw J.J. McCarthy go top 10, a first-round pick, I said, Shedeur Sanders is better than J.J. McCarthy today.
And now just one season later, that decision is sinking the offense. It's tanking Justin Jefferson's production and is leaving fans wondering, what was this team possibly thinking? And a quick break for today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. New users can play $5 and get $75 in bonus funds when you sign up with code SPORTSCODE. You're picking players to go higher or lower on their stats, and that's it. Please play responsibly. Use the link in the description or the pinned comment to sign up. Minnesota now sits at 4-8, dead last in their division. And every single week reminds everyone about the terrible choice they made. And now they started to become a laughing stock with the whole 9 persona that JJ came up with.
Do you go to a different place in your mind, like on game day?
I feel like I do. Yeah, there's definitely a level of a switch that gets flipped. For me, it's, that I call him 9.
I don't think people were thinking that Sam Darnold was going to revive his career.
Seeing ghosts.
By the time he got to San Fran, most of the league already wrote him off as a backup. But in Kyle Shanahan's system, things started to click. His footwork, his timing, his confidence. In the short amount of time he played there, you could see a little something different from him. And when he stepped in during the 2024 season, his efficiency was up. His turnovers were limited, and for the first time in his career, people were actually putting his name in the same sentence as MVP. In Minnesota, he stabilized the offense. He made Justin Jefferson's life easier. He ran Kevin O'Connell's system with ease. And the crazy part is the Vikings had every opportunity to keep him. They could have built continuity. They could have rewarded the guy who earned the locker room. They could have doubled down on a quarterback who finally looked ready to be a long-term starter. But instead, they let him walk without hesitation, almost as if his breakout didn't matter. They chose potential over production, upside over proven results, and a long-term gamble over a quarterback who was already delivering. And that's the part that still doesn't make sense. Minnesota had their answer right in front of them, and they let him go anyway. When Seattle gave Sam Darnold the chance that Minnesota refused to, he definitely has been delivering. Through 12 games in 2025, he has 2,913 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 10 picks with 103.1 passer rating. The Seahawks are also 9-3 and they're primed for a playoff push. His connection with JSN has been elite. JSN has been putting on one of the best receiving seasons in the league. He's at the top in yards and explosive plays. JSN has racked up 1,336 yards and 7 touchdowns through 12 games of football, and this also includes 8 100-plus yard games. The Seahawks are statistically one of the best teams on the road, which could turn them into a dark horse for this year's Super Bowl. And what makes the Vikings' decision even stranger is that Sam Darnold wasn't their only lifeline. Minnesota had another option sitting right on their roster, which was Daniel Jones. And while his time with the Giants ended ugly, and most of his time there was ugly, he proved he could somewhat manage games under a simple offense and Indy didn't hesitate to jump on this opportunity. They gave him stability, real coaching, and a superstar running back with an offensive line that wasn't collapsing every snap, and he suddenly looked like a serviceable quarterback. I just know the Vikings front office is beating themselves up after having not one, but two serviceable quarterbacks on their roster. So before the Vikings ever drafted JJ McCarthy, the red flags were already sitting in plain sight. Michigan didn't run an offense that showcased an NFL-ready quarterback. They ran an offense designed to hide one. A heavy run game, a dominant defense, and a structure built around keeping McCarthy clean, safe, and out of high-risk situations. And when you look at the numbers, the picture becomes even clearer. Across his Michigan career, he threw just 713 passes, one of the lowest totals you'll ever see for a first-round quarterback. He averaged only 22.9 attempts per game in 2023, and even during Michigan's national championship run, they didn't ask him to drop back and read the defense. They didn't ask him to push the ball downfield. They didn't ask him to win games with his arm. They asked him not to lose the game. Michigan kept a tight leash on him. JJ finished with 10 completions on 18 attempts for just 140 yards with no passing touchdowns. There was no drives where he was asked to take over because the run game and the defense carried that night, not the quarterback. The ball was carried a total of 38 times for Michigan in that game. His draft profile told the exact same story. Tape raised questions about ball placement and timing, and he needed a windup just to get the ball out. One of the biggest knocks was that his completion percentage looked better than it actually was because so many of his throws were low risk underneath concepts. On film, he left balls behind moving targets, squeezed timing routes too close to coverage, and struggled to get through progressions without getting stuck on his first read. Even his deep throws needed more air and quicker decisions. Nothing about his profile screamed, this guy is ready to run an NFL offense on day one. And that's the problem. Even after getting hurt and not playing a single snap his rookie year, they treated him like a polished franchise centerpiece ready to replace Kirk Cousins and ready to outplay Sam Darnold. A protected quarterback in a protected system suddenly being dropped into a win-now roster was never going to be a smooth transition. It wasn't fair to him, I'm gonna be honest, and it wasn't fair to the players depending on him. The signs were all there and the Vikings ignored every single one. What makes this entire situation even harder to understand is what the Vikings already had in place. This wasn't some rebuilding team trying to find its identity. This was a roster built to win right now. Brian Flores had turned this defense into one of the most aggressive, well-coordinated units in the league. They had Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the league, Jordan Addison, a route runner that can separate at a high level, and a running back room deep enough to control games and take pressure off any quarterback. Aside from the playoff collapse where the Vikings offensive line was depleted and Darnold was fighting for his life in the backfield, the Vikings looked stable. They were the kind of roster with a steady quarterback that could win 9 to 11 games and punch their ticket to the postseason. But instead of choosing the quarterback who fit their timeline, Minnesota chose one who didn't. And that's the heart of this story. They ignored the present. They had a defense that could carry through stretches, a coach that could scheme with anyone, and weapons that most quarterbacks dream about. And instead of capitalizing on that window, they rolled the dice on hope, potential, and patience. This was a franchise ready to chase a Super Bowl, but chose a quarterback who wasn't ready to chase anything yet. If you really want to understand how badly the Vikings misjudged their timeline, all you have to do is look at the numbers. Because the drop-off in production from Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison is very, very noticeable. With Sam Darnold under center, Jefferson had another monster season. He averaged around 98 yards per game, and he posted one of the highest catch rates of his career at nearly 70%. He already had 4 touchdowns in 4 weeks and finished with 10 touchdowns on the year and 1,533 yards. It didn't take long for the NFL to expose exactly why JJ McCarthy wasn't ready to lead a win-now team.
I feel bad for Justin Jefferson.
He gonna be all right. You're gonna be all right.
Quarterback, he's not. JJ McCarthy is gonna have to get. He's gonna have to get a lot better, Ocho. He's gonna have to get a lot better in order for this team to compete with Jordan Love in Chicago and Detroit. That's what's in your division.
The moment he stepped into the starting role, you could see the difference. The timing was off, the anticipation wasn't there, and the speed of the game overwhelmed him in ways that Michigan's protected system never could. Disguised coverages, rotating safeties, things like this forced him into full field reads that he struggled to process. The same weaknesses that showed up on his college tape, the delayed progressions, the wind up in his throwing motion, the modest arm strength, this was all on full display. Michigan never put the offense on his shoulders, but Minnesota did. And once defenses realized they could force him into tight window throws and layered reads, the game became too fast and the rookie wall was predictable and the Vikings walked right into it. The craziest part of this entire saga is that the Vikings front office didn't stumble into this by accident. They believed in JJ McCarthy. They convinced themselves they were seeing something the rest of the league was missing. And to make matters worse, they backed him up with one of the weakest quarterback rooms in the league. Their first move was signing Carson Wentz, and it was clear from the start that the version they got was a shell of his former self. In his limited action, Wentz threw for 6 touchdowns and 5 picks. This run ended with a season-ending injury. Once Wentz went down, things somehow got even worse. Minnesota had no veteran safety net, so they turned to an undrafted rookie who got thrown straight into the fire against the top Seahawks defense. He completed around 63% of his throws, averaged 4 yards per attempt, threw 4 picks with not a single touchdown, and he was also sacked 5 times. This game ended in a 26-0 shutout, and I can't even blame Max Brosmer. He wasn't ready and he shouldn't have been out there in the first place. The Vikings have just somehow mismanaged the entire quarterback room, and not many people are talking about it. The real damage from this decision isn't just happening this season, it's what it does to the future of your franchise. Because when you choose the wrong quarterback at the wrong time, you waste a lot of prime years. And that's exactly what's happening with Justin Jefferson. He was the best receiver in football for a couple years straight, and he's in the middle of his career peak, and he's putting up some of the worst numbers he's ever had because Minnesota hitched his future to a quarterback who isn't even ready. Every quiet game, every misfire, every stalled drive, it just chips away at the patience of a superstar who expects to compete for championships. This also affects the locker room. Veteran players know when a team can win and when a team is dragging an anchor. They know when the roster is built to compete and when the front office holds them back. Defensive guys who were playing lights out get tired of watching stops go to waste. Receivers get tired of being open with no ball coming. Coaches get tired of calling the perfect play only for the timing to be off. This is how frustration spreads, how tension builds, and how trust in leadership starts to fade. This is how people get fired and how people lose their jobs. Not necessarily because players dislike McCarthy, but because they know the organization chose development over contention. But at the end of the day, the Vikings made the kind of decision that reshapes an entire franchise. They took a roster that was built to compete and handed it to a quarterback who wasn't ready for the moment. They let a revived Sam Darnold walk away, and they put everything on the shoulders of a rookie who wasn't seen as pro ready. You can see the consequences every time the Vikings step on the field. Justin Jefferson posting career lows, Jordan Addison disappearing in the offense, a defense playing their heart out with nothing to show for it, and the fan base watching a Super Bowl window slide shut because the front office took a gamble that didn't match the timeline of the roster. And who knows, maybe JJ McCarthy turns into something down the road, maybe he grows, maybe he evolves, but drafting a quarterback like this for down the road just doesn't work with this roster. They drafted him to fix the present, and right now the present looks worse than it ever needed to be. So that's it. Leave a like if you enjoy it, subscribe if you're new, and drop a comment with the next team or player you want covered.